Well, should we move now on to the final section, recommendations and learnings, and really, how do we think the businesses could better facilitate flexi working and home working for staff? Shirley, would you like to take that one first?
Oh wow! How long have you got? Let's deal with it on several levels. I think individuals. Erica and Helen have both said that working for yourself isn't for everybody. Being self-employed, running a business isn't for everybody. I think that also applies to home-based working, and that could be because your home isn't suitable. I talked about my son-in-law with 4 children and 2 dogs. It's not a quiet place to work unless he's doing it at midnight. So it could be your home. Mm-hmm. Also for individuals, particularly young people in their early 20s. I mean, I've stood up at conference. How many people out of this 200 audience met their current partner at work? And it's quite a high percentage. So if people are not going to work, where are people going to meet their future partners?
That's a good point.
Also, of course, for a lot of people, they don't have their own home. They live with their parents, or they live in a flat share, so the home is not suitable. And one of the things that's coming up on that is more work hubs where people can work locally without travelling. But so the individual has to make sure that they have both a suitable physical environment and they also have the right mental attitude. For employees, for managers, I think it's absolutely crucial that they don't have, well, firstly, the agreement to work from home is actually agreement and that both parties think it's a good idea. Secondly, absolutely, it does not work if it's not effective in the office, if they don't get a good performance review, if you don't trust them to do the work in the office, then sure as hell they're not going to improve if you send them home. So you do need to know that people are motivated, competent, and you can use their initiative. And there's some training that you can give people. But they certainly have to have the right sort of attitude. And, of course, the vast majority of people are so pleased that an organisation gives them the opportunity to work this way, trusts them to work this way, that they are more loyal, they stay longer and work harder. So there are benefits there. Managers, of course, can be a barrier and need training. And I guess my view is that if you've got a good manager, somebody who knows their people, knows what motivates them, supposed to be doing, sets objectives, doesn't stand over them all day, then they will manage remote people perfectly adequately. If you've got somebody who's a command and control manager, then they're going to struggle. If, I said that when I was doing consultancy, managers would say to me, how am I going to know they're working if they're not in front of me? Well, how do you know they're working if they are in front of you? It's dead easy to walk around looking busy. The key is that we have to move to work and payment for work, which is based on outputs. What does this manager expect this person to do? What do the things that they expect them to produce, and keep track of how they're doing against those objectives. If you pay people on the basis that their coat is parked on the back of the chair from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, then you're not going to manage remote workers very well.
Sure.
I could say loads more, but why don't I shut up and hear what the other people say?
Helen, shall we pass that to you? How do you think that businesses could better facilitate home and flexi working?
Well, I think we generally need a change in culture about work, because we've still got quite a lot of companies have got quite an old-fashioned attitude if you look at it, because we've got a situation where we've got, like I said, this amazing technology that means a lot of us can work from anywhere. We've got people leaving the workforce with valuable skills because the 9 to 5, well, it's not a 9 to 5 anymore, is it? It's a lot longer than that, but the kind of 9 to 5 sitting at a desk thing isn't flexible. We've got people who want different things out of life to not have to work in those types of ways. we've got massive problems with pollution and traffic, and all in all, we've got a sort of work culture that is way behind the world that we're living in, as far as I can see. So we need to kind of catch up, and I think probably sharing the case studies like the AA to not only, because I think you often see the benefits of home working rolled out, but you don't often see the evidence for it unless you look a little bit deeper. And I think if people could see, all the women that are lost from the workforce because of the cost of childcare and the fact that work is inflexible, and we could see all the waste that was going on, all these people that want to contribute and want to earn an income, but work is, the world of work does not fit what they want to do. I think we would have a much better working life. We would have more productive people. There'd be massive benefits, but we just need to change the working culture so that we can take advantage of the new way the world works and not be stuck in the work culture that there used to be.
Sure. And Erica, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is an issue of, I think partially on the actual workers' end, it's an issue of social conditioning, this perception that if you're not sitting in an office from 8 till 6 or 9 till 5, that you're not actually working. And then on the other side, on the company side, I think they just advertise jobs because that's the way they've always done it. They're not looking to see what actual work is required and what of those tasks could be outsourced to home workers, and what of those jobs actually require somebody to be sitting in an office while they watch them do it. Because I think if a lot of companies were to look at that, they would sort of do away with the jobs that they currently have and just look at everything in a task-based way. What can be done at home, what needs to be done in front of me, and then that would create more positions that home workers could do, whereas at the moment, as we've discussed, there are hardly any. From my own point of view, we've got a flexible worker. She's a stay-at-home mum, and I don't really care when she does the work or how long it takes her to do the work. As far as I'm concerned, if I email her work and it gets done, that's all I really care about, leaving me free to do my own job. It's really obvious to me, but as the other two, as Shirley and Helen have pointed out, I think the work for the sort of companies and everything is so far behind, the way that people want to live now. There needs to be some sort of, revolution there in terms of the way they look at things.
Sure.
I think it's also, though, it's interesting. Yes, I think that there's a big picture of the way people want to live now, and that organisations haven't caught up with that. But I think that the reality is that organisations do things because there is some benefit to them. This is why that the right to request flexible working, rolling it in with maternity leave, etc., doesn't do it any favours, because employers get the impression that, this is because people want to live their life. And as an employer, I've got a government beating my head saying that I have to do this. I think that we need a change in culture in organisations, but we also need a change in emphasis in government, which is that this is actually not about, for businesses, it's not about the fact that people want to live their lives differently. It's about the fact that they can save money, they can get more productivity, they can do more with less if they use the way that people want to live their life differently to run their organisation and their business differently. Because basically, a 5% improvement in the bottom line is what sells things in organisations, rather than, wouldn't it be nice if we let our people work from home because it would fit in better with their lives?
I think that's where companies have fallen into bad habits, though, because they're just doing what they've always done. There are obvious cost benefits to doing the home working thing, but for whatever reason, they're not being driven to do so.
I think it's a lot easier to say, well, I'm going to hire somebody to sit at this desk where I can see them all day and see what they're doing. It's a lot It's a lot easier to do it. Yeah, I know. I mean, obviously the offshoot is that they could be sitting on Facebook all day, but it's because if that's the way we've always worked, it's easier to fit in with that structure than it is to say, I know, why don't we do something different?
Absolutely.
And I think that's the thing, and I absolutely agree. I mean, the companies I've worked for, if you said, well, can we all work from home because it'll be nicer? You'd never get anywhere. You've got to say, if you lot all work from home, we would save X amount of money. That's absolutely the way you've got to put it.
And of course, the legislation, the right to request legislation, does actually say that it's not a right to have flexible working, it's only a right to ask for it. But what it requires is that you put together a business case. And that's one. It's changing in some organisations because when you put the business case together, it's blooming obvious that it makes sense. In fact, there's one organisation, I think it might be Lloyd's or it might be Nationwide. I think it's Nationwide. This was going back 5 or 6 years, when they implemented their home-based flexible working policy, they extended it to everybody, not just the parents, carers that the legislation said. They extended it to everybody, and you had to put together a business case to say how it would affect teamwork, how would it affect everybody else, all that sort of thing. And so it had to be beneficial. And they put an interesting thing on it, which was that they said that managers were not allowed under any circumstances to ask why you wanted flexible working, because it's irrelevant. If you've got a good business case, it doesn't matter whether you want to work flexibly because of because you like to go horse riding on Wednesday afternoon, because you're training for a sport, or just because you want a life. It's really irrelevant. If you've got a good business case, then all of that doesn't matter.
It sounds like a lot of the impetus, though, is coming from the sort of employees. It's astounding to me why more companies aren't, taking the initiative themselves and looking at their bottom line and how they're working and how they're staffing their companies, and thinking, we could save an awful lot of money by just outsourcing a lot of these, especially the administrative type stuff that can be done, remotely very easily.
Yes, but I'm not talking about outsourcing. I'm talking about having their employees.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I meant having people at home.
I think a lot of it is to do with not exactly misinformation, but certainly misunderstanding. And it's not helped by the government saying that flexible working is about carers. It's interesting that a month or so ago I went to a focus Norman Baker, the Transport Minister, and there is now a huge focus on flexible working and home-based working, because London is going to be chaotic next year because of the Olympics. So they've suddenly woken up to the fact that actually, if people work differently, never mind about all this, it's good for the individual and there are bottom line benefits for the organisation. If people work differently, what a difference it could make to London if everybody worked from home one day a week. All right, it might not solve the Olympic problem, but it would make a huge difference to congestion and overcrowded trains and pollution. And of course, the Olympics has turned out to be a focus for the Department of Transport, actually saying, well, maybe our job is not just to manage the transport infrastructure that we've got. Maybe our job ought to be, at least partly, to encourage people to find alternatives to travel, like conference calls like we're on at the moment, calls or remote meetings or home-based working and all that sort of thing. So I think there is a move within government to recognise, because basically we've got a group of 3 or 4 people here. We're preaching to the converted. We already know that this works. What we need is some big organisation with lots of money, and the government's got lots of our money, that actually promotes this as good for business and good for the environment. All right, if they put the tag, it's good for the environment because it saves on carbon emissions and those sorts of things. That's great, but we need some. I mean, the Teleworker Association we've been banging our head on this door for the last 2 decades, saying, "Hey, you out there, this is not just about individuals; it's about a much broader thing." But we are a small not-for-profit. We don't have the resources to mount a huge campaign to promote it, but government does, and perhaps the for transport is alternatives to travel is a small beginning that will extend further.